Hey friends, welcome to today's video, Style Files. Now, last year on Playtest Patreon, we did a Style Files video, the first one that I ever did. Haven't done one since, so I'm a little rusty. Not really, I mean, it's a simple concept. Last year we took Tim Burton as our main study, and we kind of just explored what makes his style so quintessentially Tim Burton. What are the things that keep repeating? How does he create? What does he use? What are the motifs? What are the elements? We just kind of basically dive into an artist and try and figure out what their style is and how they go about their creativity in an essence to help us understand how we can move forward with our own. So today I'm going to be diving into Mary Blair, who is just so good. What else do I say about Mary Blair? If you are unfamiliar with Mary Blair, you're kind of missing out a little bit. Super whimsical stuff, really great artist, very synonymous with a lot of really iconic Disney imagery, not so much in the films, but the concept art that created a lot of what we come to love and appreciate about classic Disney films today. And I'm going to go on a bit of a journey to explore that and see what I really like about her work. I've kind of done this before, but never really intentionally on Mary Blair. Just kind of picked apart a few things here and there. Today I'm really excited to kind of dive deeper into that. I have two books with me, The Art of the Disney Golden Books, and I have The Hidden Art of Disney's Mid-Century Era. I love Disney coffee table books, especially the concept art ones. I have a few, very conservative amount. I have way too many. For someone that doesn't read, I have way too many. I read the pictures. I don't really read a lot of the words. Sometimes I do if I'm really feeling in the mood to fully understand things. I'll read the words. But today I'm going to go through these books here. I'm also going to get online and have a look at some stuff on there. I've got a documentary that I'm going to watch, and we're just going to kind of go through that research process together. It is so important, if you really want to dive into something deeper, to take the time to understand it. Now, that doesn't mean you have to get it. You don't have to be able to do it, but to understand where it comes from, why it came about, why they do the things they do, or how they do the things they do. Just having the understanding in the back of your brain gives you access to some of that information when you are feeling in a bit more of an experimental mood yourself. The bonus is, if you are kind of researching things that you do enjoy, it doesn't really feel a lot like research. It just kind of feels like a fun, like, closer look at something. So we're not going to take a really academic approach to it today. We're just going to look at the imagery. We're going to look at the color palettes. We're going to look at the mediums that Mary Blair uses. We're going to pull out any kind of identifiable features going on in a lot of the work that I personally find more inspirational to the way I like to create. And I'm going to note it all down and kind of play with it towards the end of the video once we've got a nice collection of information to use. I will just say one thing that I don't know if I mentioned on the Tim Burton Style Files. Style in itself is such a loaded topic, and I know I've mentioned this before and I never really go into it because, to be honest, it is completely different for everybody. Some people really value style, some people don't value it at all, and then a lot of people fall in the middle and think maybe it's a good thing to go for, maybe it's something you don't really need. I'm of the personal opinion that style is super subjective. What I think might be a style that I like to create in may not be what you recognize, and I've often noticed that style comes through a lot of repetition. So it may not be something that you think is synonymous with you, but if you do it enough, people will identify that as your style because it keeps repeating itself over and over again. Whether that's a certain color palette, whether that's certain motifs that you like to draw, certain imagery and subject matter that you like to draw or create with, anything that happens over and over and over again builds a better picture of who you are as a creator, and that will inevitably be what people identify as your style. So this video isn't going to teach you how to get your own style. This is going to be the way that I kind of pick apart style, which is just a lot of repetition. If I notice that something keeps reoccurring in Mary Blair's work, I will pick that out as an identifiable feature and I'll note that down. If I notice something that I like, but I don't necessarily think it pops up all the time, perhaps I'm looking at one of her more experimental pieces and I think that's a really good thing to try, I might also note that down. That doesn't necessarily mean that's what I think Mary Blair's style is, but diving deeper into the process is not necessarily so we can become Mary Blair, but it's to help us access whatever Mary Blair is accessing to be able to create better for ourselves. So before I make this intro way too long, let's just dive into these books and pick out, first of all, I'm just going to pick out any pages that has Mary Blair's work on it. So let's zoom you down here. Alright, Mary Blair, what have you got for us? Now, actually, the first cover of this page is a Mary Blair piece. I do believe it's in the book, so I'll kind of leave that for a minute, and we'll make note of it when we get there. I'm going to grab my little dispenser roll of post-it note tape, just so I can put little flags on any of the imagery that I find. This is They Drew As They Pleased, The Hidden Art of Disney's Mid-Century Era. I love this book. I believe this is Mary Blair as well. She's got a lot in here. All I want to do first is grab any of the Mary Blair imagery. Oh look, there's Mary there. Mary Blair was the artist who most impacted Walt Disney's sense of visual style in the 1950s, both with her whimsical designs and her bold colour selections. Love that. Let me just note that. It's not a piece of art, but I do like that little statement. So I'm going to go through and just pick out all of the imagery, and then I'm actually going to watch a documentary and dive into a bit of her history with Disney before I start going back to the artwork. So I'm going to speed through this process until I get to the next book. Now this is Mary Blair's section, so get ready to be inspired. I'm just talking to myself here. Come on, glamour! I know I said I was going to speed through it, but I just have to read this little section. I get way too involved in this process. It's so good. There was something about Mary Blair's style that appealed to Walt's sensitivity, the way she projected a childlike innocence into her art, or perhaps her uncanny sense of colour. Look at these gorgeous images. I mean, I could just postmark this whole section, but I just want to know where all the images are, so I'll speed through it now. Well, for anyone curious, in Playtest 2018, I actually did a video where I pulled inspiration from this specific coffee table book. You might remember I used this to inspire some of the house sketches. There's actually a lot in here that I have used as inspiration before, so this is giving me like a bit of a nostalgic feel right now looking through it all. But if you do have access to that, not only is the Style Files video relative to this one, because it's the same video, just a different artist, but also the Finding Inspiration Disney Coffee Table Books video is where this book pops back up again. Alright, I've gathered all of the images from this book. Now I'm going to go into the Art of the Disney Golden Books and do the same thing. This one's a little difficult because this is actually done by Tom Oreb, and he actually used Mary Blair's concept art to illustrate these, or to paint these with gouache. So I'm like really tempted to put a little tab here, but it's not essentially Mary Blair, so I'm going to skip that one, even though I do love these ones. An odd thing about pulling inspiration from this book as well, kind of a little random, but I do think of it, because this book is about the Disney Golden Books, and a lot of those books are formatted to have illustration and words. I feel like this is a really good book to pull inspiration from for people that like to journal with their illustrations, because you get a sense for the formatting of how to put pictures in and words with those pictures in a really harmonious way. I mean, it's a very children's book style, but there's still really good imagery here, like how to create your illustrations and then how to make little border vignettes that are also illustrations. And I think this would be really handy to reference if you are art journaling and try to mix your artistic side with your more expressive, you know, literary side. I love these little mermaids here. The Neverland mermaids are my favorite thing ever. Alright, that's everything for that book as well. Alright, so I've got both my books kind of postmarked. Is postmarked? That's not the word. Earmarked? Post-it noted. I've got all my post-it notes in there to reference the artwork for later. Right now I'm going to get onto my iPad and watch a short documentary on Mary Blair and just take notes. I'm going to use my MD paper sketchbook. It's just a large grid sketchbook. I just do tons of anything in here. I'm just going to scroll notes, kind of scribble and scratch and do whatever as I go through the documentary, and I'll be back to share some of my thoughts once that's done. So I'll just pop this camera right behind me and you can kind of watch over my shoulder for a second. I'll also give you a look at what I'm scribbling in my journal as I go along, but I get way too involved in these documentaries, so if there's nothing written in there, just know that I'm having a really good time. Alright, so I've got my YouTube up here. I'm going to watch The Art of Mary Blair, and in brackets featurette. I'll put that on this screen so you can reference that for later if you want to have a look at it. I'm going to watch that, make all my notes, and I'll flip up into the bird's eye view so you can see what I'm scratching down as we go along.
Mary Blair's name might not be as recognizable as a lot of the animators, especially the ones that became the 901 men.
Okay. So entranced. Like, it was over in a flash. It was like the ultimate sketch flicks, I guess. I wasn't really trying to sketch anything out. I just wanted to take the information, hear the way that she was described by many people who have also been influenced by her work, and kind of take away what they're taking away as well. You know, like I said, style is completely subjective, and what other people will notice may not necessarily be what you think your style is. So it is really great to hear how other people kind of summarize. And it's so funny because even in that documentary they say, you know, this work, the Peter Pan and the Alice in Wonderland concept sketches are quintessentially Mary Blair, and then another artist will say, like, I think Cinderella is quintessentially Mary Blair, and that's where most of her work actually shows up in the films. Because one of the funniest things about Mary Blair, and I have seen this featurette before, but watching it again just because it's part of the video, but you know, I always pick up something new anyway. But one of the things that I did take away from it the first time I watched it was that she was inspirational and influential, but not a lot of her work actually made it to screen, if much at all. A lot of it influenced what happened on the screen. A lot of it was like her amazing use of color. A lot of it was the way that she could take bold, you know, really simple shapes and like one or two lines and really create an expression and emotion. She had an incredible ability to create stunning artwork, and her husband actually started out more as fine artists, and then through the Great Depression, it's all explained in there, but I'll just give you a brief summary. Through the Great Depression, they were looking for a way to make money. Commercial illustration at that point was a great way for them to be able to make money with the skills that they had. She was on a scholarship to an art school, a prestigious art school. That's where she met her husband, Lee, both incredible artists. She started working at Disney, and it's said a lot that he was captivated by her use of color because it was so strange, and it was so it worked so well even though it wasn't conventional. And not only that, like her use of color, but just the way she did it. Like it was so effortless, it was so simple, and that he was captivated with how childlike her spirit was in that artwork, because it mostly reflected how childlike he was himself with the way that he liked to be creative, and I guess essentially the vision that he had for, you know, ultimately what would become Disneyland and the Disney brand that we know it today. I love how I said I'm not getting academic and like listen to me giving a speech. So wraps up our TED Talk. But no, it's just super fascinating because these are things that I have also picked up over time watching things like this. And, you know, as much as it is so good to practice and so good to, you know, sit down with your journals and your art supplies and to play and to rip apart a journal and to break one in, sometimes it's so good just to stop and listen and to understand how all of this is passed through generations. I think also, weirdly enough, this is what makes me feel like it's not such a big deal to be inspired by people, to try what they're trying, to take what it is that they love and to see if you could love it the same way or a different way yourself. Essentially, Disney, like the brand that we know is probably like one of the biggest entertainment brands today, was built off of not just one person. Walt Disney just didn't do that himself. The artists behind, like the teams and teams and teams of artists, all of the greats that were there, they worked together to create an ultimate goal, and that was to give that gift of storytelling and to provide an escape into fantasy and into all of these childhood stories that, you know, used to have a pretty grim ending. Now we have, you know, the very Disney-fied endings. You know, at the end of the day, they're all individual artists. They were all so great at what they did, but they were able to learn from each other, to pull from each other. Part of the documentary does go into detail about what it was like to be a woman in the 1950s and to be a Mary Blair type, in the sense that you have a position of influence or power at a studio or even in any kind of workforce. Like, it was so against the grain of society, and the fact that she was shy but she wouldn't let herself be walked all over. I mean, she's truly an inspiration just beyond the work that she does, but just the person that she was, and the fact that she enjoyed her time there. She did it, she loved it, she provided so much inspiration for people, even the artists and animators that say that were resisting the change to bring Mary Blair on, that didn't want her influence involved, that didn't want her to be a part of these projects, ended up being influenced by her. And I think that's so good. That is so good to know, to think of that concept, that it. There are people out there that don't want you to be there, but you showing up with the passion that you have and being able to influence them anyway, being able to take the light that you have and insert that spark into their life and their creativity, they won't be able to help but be influenced by what you're putting out there. I think that's a beautiful message in and of itself. Video done, that's what the video is for. But yeah, super interesting featurette. If you have 15 minutes and you want to watch it, I highly recommend it. So I've got a couple of pages here. You can see just mostly just scribble scratches. I'll turn that down so you can see it. I've written just key parts of information, you know, obviously the incredible use of color, simple strokes. I tried to draw a little bit. Mary Blair also worked on It's a Small World and was kind of the visionary behind the whole look and aesthetic of It's a Small World. I am just truly taken with her, and I actually, the next part of this video I was going to get online and go searching deeper for more reference images. I think at this point, with the information that I have written down and the reference images I have in the book, I'm not going to do that step. If you were going to take this, you know, as a research exercise tutorial, however you want to look at it, I would encourage going online. The thing that I want to note about being online though is that, first of all, there's something so tangible about a book. I don't know why, I just love it. I love the feel of the paper. I love to be able to flip through it. I love that it's right there in print. So if you are going to go online, I would recommend printing out some of those resource images, even if you put them on a mood board or you just have them off to the side so that you can just physically handle something and possibly even draw over the top of it to get an idea of a shape. A lot of what's online and on a screen becomes very one-dimensional, very... not even, I mean, obviously it's two-dimensional, but it doesn't feel like an intuitive part of the process sometimes. So I would recommend having a physical copy if you can print it. Obviously just use that for your personal references. And if you are going to go on Instagram or one of those, not Patreon, Pinterest. If you're going to go on one of those search platforms where a lot of people contribute their own works and their own inspiration from Mary Blair, try and be a bit more discerning in this process, not to be inspired by someone else's inspiration, only because you might be departing a bit from the original influence. That it's kind of beneficial to understand that first before you start looking at all the tangents and the spin-offs. So even what I do today, I'm not saying don't, like, obviously do what you want to do, but if you were going to really take this on board as a research project for yourself, try to stick with the original pieces first. Like, even I get tempted because some of the pieces people did based off of Mary Blair's influence are just inspiring in and of themselves, but just during the first stages, try to stick to the influence. And on that note, I'm going to set myself up with an art journal now, and I'm going to have just a free play. I'm going to take the words, the ideas, simple shapes, simple lines, the palettes that she would use. She moved from watercolor to gouache, and you know, from her fine art, really beautiful watercolors, into very bold gouache. A lot of her backgrounds were really dark, and she would paint these opaque layers over the top. They were so simple. They would like 1 or 2 brush strokes for a body. Like, it's going to be difficult. I've done this before. It's not easy. But my expectation is not to create anything good right now. My expectation is to dive deep into her process and to just let it stimulate whatever playtime I end up having with this. So I'm going to put you into another bird's eye view and we'll just kind of watch that process evolve. I will jump up into a voiceover as well and kind of explain what I learned through the process and some of the identifiable features that I noticed about Mary Blair's style that influenced my creative playtime. So let's get that set up and I'll see you in a second.
G'day voiceover. Alright, so let me just get into some of the things I learnt about Mary Blair's style. I learnt that, obviously, I mean, she's a genius with colour. Now, throughout this process, working on the dark and the toned backgrounds, which are also very much a feature of Mary Blair's style, was making me choose colours with a bit of a different approach. So I don't know how closely that is linked, but I thought it was something interesting to note throughout the process, because as I started to put these backgrounds down first, even for an illustration, I noticed that Mary Blair doesn't really ever have just a white piece of paper with a drawing on it. Even if she's doing character designs, they're usually on a textured background, like a splash of acrylic paint or or gouache, or there's just some, toned paper, some craft paper that she's worked on. I don't think she ever really starts with a white canvas. I'm sure she has. Like, I'm not going to say that that's not what she does, but especially all of these works did seem like they were on craft, toned, black, dark backgrounds, and that was really interesting, especially as you're using different mediums. you tend to gravitate towards your more opaque mediums. I found myself using a lot of colors, but then mixing a lot of white gouache in there to make them even more opaque, which was pastelizing, I was going to say. Is that a word? It was making the colors more pastel, and therefore the effect is different. Even the color contrast of some, really light and bright colors on a black background, it just pops so much more. The effect is so much more bold, and so definitely one of the things I wanted to notice was her use of color and the way that a lot of the time her work is on a dark or a toned background. So definitely something interesting. I've played with that before, but also it came up a lot more prominently in this session, and I think that's something that I would encourage you to try, even if you're not going to do the Mary Blair style files or anything. If you're just going to go and have a play with something, if you're just going to go and draw something today, I encourage you to paint a really dark or toned background and then work from there. See how it affects your choices in color palette and even the mediums you use, because if it's dark, you'll probably have to use something opaque, and there's some things that just aren't very opaque, that don't work well. So you'll probably just steer away from those and pick the ones that do, and ultimately you'll end up with something, and it might be good, it might be not, but you'll have learned something. So that's what I noticed in that. Her mixture of mediums that I thought were most prominent were gouache and pencil or crayon, pastel. There was a pencil texture, a crayon texture, a pastel kind of a look. So I noticed that was most prominent in a lot of the pieces. So that's what I tried to stick with today. The problem was, if you look up in the top left-hand corner, you'll see that there's a dry brush effect with that brush stroke on that painting. I mean, the nerve of Mary Blair to do that. Like, could you imagine getting to that point in the illustration and then thinking, all right, here we go, and then pushing your brush across the page? I'd be so nervous, but it's a dry brush effect, and I learned that throughout this process. As much as I love my gouache palette, I can't really dry brush with it very well, because the nature of having a dehydrated palette is that you have to re-wet it a lot, and you have to scrub those little cakes to get the pigment reactivated. So I had a very liquid mixture of paint, which doesn't necessarily work well for a dry brush effect. So I might have to crack out the gouache tubes the next time I want to do something like that, but also just something I learned about the experience, and wouldn't have known if I didn't try this. So that was pretty good. The next thing is that the pictures are so childlike, and they're almost innocent in the way that they look and the way that you emote with them. Some of them they're just super expressive and they're emotive, but they're all done with such a light touch. Now, if you're looking at the piece that I'm doing right now, and I'm going over it 60 times, mixed media has afforded me the luxury of feeling like I can do anything and everything and then just cover it up. The problem with trying to venture into Mary Blair's work is that is completely the opposite of what Mary Blair does. Mary Blair is bold in her approach, and it is light. There are seldom pieces where anything looks overworked in any sense, which is just exactly where I went with it. And that is not a bad thing. It's not inherently bad, but I wanted to be able to push myself to think about that more in the future and try and see if I can be a little lighter with my approach, if I can just commit to certain shapes, even if they're a little wonky. Because the thing is, like, I don't mind if shapes are wonky, but even then I feel like they have to be wonky in the right way. And I don't know if maybe I could enjoy having them wonky in the wrong way. I don't know, because I don't let myself do that. So I think I could be lighter in my approach and lighter in my touch next time, and I think that would probably benefit at least learning something. I might not like it, but I didn't really tackle that today in any kind of effective way, so I want to try that again. Graphic, bold shapes, I think that's a given. A lot of the shapes that you look at, even if they're all together, grouped into an image, and it might look like a very complicated image, the shapes essentially are actually very graphic and very simple, so that's interesting to note. And then warped perspective and skewed proportions. Something that I like to talk about in my whimsical illustration workshop is perspective and, skewing how you see proportions and the placement of certain things in illustration, because I believe that one of the things that makes anything quite whimsical is that you are transported out of a very real place. So the more you can skew what people are expecting to see, the more whimsical it's going to feel, because they're not going to be able to recall it from their brain, or they'll recall, what they're seeing, the imagery, but they will have never seen it like you're showing it. And so that really comes down to using proportion in a way to exaggerate certain things or to really minimize certain features. You can make a character look 6 foot tall or 5, millimeters tall, depending on what you put next to it. So that was also really interesting to note as well. Also very affirming for how I think about proportion and placement and skewing and perspectives, because I do believe that it is what makes it so whimsical. It's one of the features that makes something so whimsical. So to see that in Mary Blair's work and to see her use of that was also really interesting, and I like that. That's everything I think I learned from this. I'm going to wrap this one up. I did end up working on these 8 pieces, and a lot of them were just kind of direct references from what I was seeing. I learned an absolute ton. I know I've just kind of skimmed over everything I've just covered here, but this is truly a beneficial process to anyone looking to extend on your skill set, and perhaps you don't really want to have to go and take a course or a class. This is something that you could lead the way for, and it's very simple to do. Do it on your own terms, do it in your own time, and pick apart the things that you think you might love. You will find out very quickly if it's something you want to try again or you're okay to leave inside the pages of that journal. But yeah, really, really happy with it. Had a fantastic time. I've got a little message for the end of this video, and then I'm going to show you the close-ups of everything after that message is finished. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm probably going to say that again at the end of the message that I put in the video. But yeah, really, really good time. I can't stress that enough. I had an amazing time. Okay, I'll see you again in a second.
Well, it is done. I had a great time. It is late. I've been going for hours. The sun moved from there to there. It's so late. I actually need to be somewhere right now. I just wanted to jump on here just quickly in case I forget to mention this in the voiceover. I want to give you permission to copy to learn. Not to copy to sell. That's a different thing. That's stealing. Copy to learn. For me, I can only give you the permission from myself, but I love to give this permission slip over and over and over again just in case someone's missed it. Please take whatever you like and try it. Learn it, have fun with it. It's so flattering to me and so humbling an experience when someone says, oh, I like that you did that. I was inspired to try it myself. I don't take any personal offense to it. I would just say, sorry, it's so hot. I would just say, I don't speak for everyone, and I don't want to beat around the bush. I'd be lying if I sat here and said, oh, I've never seen these things happen before. No, I have. There are a bunch of social media justice warriors, self-appointed Instagram police and Facebook police that will come after you if you're copying something they don't want you to be copying. Even if you're just doing it to learn, if you're selling it, obviously that's understandable, but if you're just doing it to learn, even some people who are considered teachers maybe don't want you to learn from them or don't want you to learn for free. Whatever. It is what it is. That's up to those people. I could spend half an hour talking about my own personal feelings on that, but to be fair, my opinions aren't really going to change any of those people's points of view. So I do have to respect that those people are different, and I just don't want to be, it would be so irresponsible for me to get on here and say copy to learn, and then you get attacked by all these people because you tried it and you accidentally picked the wrong person. So I would encourage you to be a little discerning. Most of the time your gut will steer you in the right direction. If that person doesn't seem so open and so generous, they probably don't want you copying from them. If that person is someone that you get that vibe from, even then it might still behoove us to ask before you do it. Personally, I'm going to give myself away here. I don't ask. I ask for forgiveness rather than permission, and that is because I am selfish with my creativity. If I want to learn something and I want to try something, I'm going to do it anyway. So let's just be real about that. I will just say that in the past when that has happened and I have been told like it's stepping on someone's toes, I have just decided not to move forward with that creator anymore. I kind of cut ties there and I just don't publicly do anything anymore. Will I still learn behind the scenes? 100%. I can't lie. I will. It's terrible, but that's what we do. That is, I can't get behind someone else telling me that I'm not allowed to use this certain mixture of colors or mediums or aesthetic features just because they don't want me to. Like, it's just not gonna happen, so that's how I feel about that. Is that terrible? You're terrible, Muriel. All right, no, I just wanted to say, like, there will be people that will come after you, so either do it and don't post online, or make sure you do ask permission beforehand if it's someone that you think might not be okay with that, or just kind of steer clear altogether, to be honest. But there are tons and tons and tons of people, more people that are happy for you to do that and to be inspired by them, that would be super flattered by that, than there are people that need to lay claim to something that they will, you know, fight you for. So I'm just going to leave you with that piece of information. I had an absolutely amazing time doing it. Please, please, please have a great time, whatever you choose to do over the weekend, whatever you choose to do with your creativity time. I hope you enjoyed that video. I've got to run off to where I'm supposed to be running off to, and I will see you again very soon. Bye.